Okay, so before we get on with today's videos, I'd just like to thank you guys for helping me surpass 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. Honestly, I didn't think that I would be serious with this YouTube thing ever since I started about 6 years ago. So it's a huge motivation boost for me to keep on doing this on a more regular basis. Also, someone reached out on Instagram saying they're the 1,000th subscriber, and I just hit them back with a casual king and acknowledgement. Honestly, if you subscribe to my channel, you're kings and queens in my eyes, honestly. So thank you guys so much for this achievement, and let's get on to the video. So as a premise to this video, I just want to mention how much I was influenced by School of Motion's series of video tutorials on the text animation, and it really blew my mind. And so watching those video tutorials really expanded my mind on how we can treat text animation as some sort of shapes or video elements, since they can do things that normally it would be too difficult to do on a shape. So yeah, more or less these two techniques over here that I'm gonna show you is inspired by watching those two videos from 3 years ago, I remember, by School of Motion. So yeah, make sure to check him out, and now let's jump into this video. Okay, so I know there's been countless video tutorials on text animation in After Effects on YouTube, but I'm gonna put the final results over here. So as you guys can see, what we're heading towards is not exactly text animation, but the final results gonna look like some messy, chaotic textures, that we can use to put on top of something else, for example. Or it could be like some alien language. The thing about text in After Effects is that we can use them, that we can treat them as some sort of shape layers. Now, I don't know all the details of how we can actually use text in After Effects, but I think to some degree we can use them as some sort of vectorized shape layers, and we can stretch them up to a pretty significant extent. Not as much as a shape layer, I'm guessing, but it's pretty significant. Right, so to start it off, we're gonna create a new composition. Head over here, it could be anything you want. Right now I'm sticking with the standard square, which is 920 by 1080. And then what we're gonna do here is that we're gonna find an article or like a paragraph. It could be of anything, something that you like. For example, me personally, I'll look up Nissan GTR. I'll head over to the Wikipedia. Oh, look at that, dude. Yeah, that's gonna be mine one day. Pick any of the paragraphs you want, highlight it all, and copy it. Right now in the composition, we're gonna head over to the text tool, horizontal type tool, and then we're gonna drag it in front of the preview screen. Make sure it looks like a rectangle, and then control paste the article that we just copied. And right, the next step is we're gonna make sure to pick like a fat font, a heavyweight font, not fat, sorry. Our next step is to head over to the text animation tools over here. You click on this menu, and it will show you all the things that we can do, all the things that we can use to animate the text with. And what we're gonna want is the character offset settings. And as you can see, if you adjust the property of this setting, is gonna offset the value of each of the characters that we see on the screen. We're not gonna offset the entire thing like this, but instead we're gonna offset them perpetually up. Okay, now the important part is that we're gonna mess around with the range selector down here. And as you can see, there's three settings: the start, end point, and offset. The start and end indicates where the range of the vector is gonna be. So over here is 100% of the text, but if I drag it down, drag the end down to 50%, for example, it's gonna end up over here to the middle of the entire text. So what we're gonna do is, we can have them wherever you want. 35. We're gonna choose a moderate number, so that way we don't affect the entire text at once. And then down here, if you click on advanced, down here, there's a bunch of settings over here, but there's gonna be two that we're gonna mess around with, which is the smoothness. Now, if you see earlier in my example, the smoothness affect basically how smooth the transformation of the text is. Now, as you can see, it's like clicking between text, like changing up between text and not actually changing gradually. So that what we do is we'll drag the smoothness down to maybe like we can do 0, but 0 is like too harsh for me. So what I did is I had them to be 13. And the most important settings is the randomized order over here. And definitely have to turn it on. And when you turn it on, the vector is going to be randomized, but it's still going to be randomized to only 35% of the text. So we've put it like to 100%. It's still going to affect 100%. We drag it down gradually to 13%. So only 13% of the entire text is going to be affected. But it's going to be affected in a randomized order, and not being dictated by where the end and start point is. So make sure that you leave that on. And then what I animated was the offset setting over here. So click on that and tag it at one point, and at the end of your animation, I'll make my animation 10 seconds, for example. I'll drag it up to 100 so that if you're wondering, I don't use the random seed setting, because the random seed is gonna affect the entire thing, and I just want some of the letters to be affected. And that's how it's gonna look like. Now for the fun step, gonna go over here to effects and presets, type in displacement map. Probably one of my most favorite effects in After Effects. You drag it and you displace it on itself by some of the settings that you find reasonable. And then what you're gonna do next is Control D or Command D this effect, copy it into another, and this second one will do the exact opposite of what we just did. So if over here the horizontal displacement is 55, we're gonna do minus 55, and over here if it's 3, we're gonna do minus 3. So right now we got a whole mess of like a fluctuating texture. Now I'm gonna scale it up so you can see a little bit better. There. And if some of the letter is still way too visible, what you can do is fluctuate the displacement even more, until we get the look that we want. Or something that we can change is also the settings of the types. If you drag up the types size, there's font size, tracking, leading, adjust that, and it will also change how the displacement look. And for the final step, what we're gonna want to do to achieve that chaotic texture looks is that we're gonna want to get rid of all the remnants of what the letter used to have over here by the displacement, because the displacement map is not it's good, but it's not doing a perfect job of get rid of all the outlines of the maps below it. So obviously what we're gonna do is put a choker on it. Could be a simple choker or a matte choker. You want to be more specific. This time I'm just gonna use a simple choker as an example. Right here, as you can see, it's already coming up with yeah. And if you rotate this block of text, the displacement maps over here is not gonna take into account that rotation, and it's just gonna rotate, and it's just gonna displace the text that has been rotated. So it's gonna give you like a pretty good parallax effect, a parallax illusion. Yeah, it looks like the displacement or the textures is being put on top of each other. So yeah, and also you can mess around with the font. You know, if you choose like a different font, you're gonna get a different result. Ooh, right here it looks like, yeah, it looks like a bunch of stars or like constellations in the sky being displaced and just popping in and popping out. It's looking really nice, and you know, play around with it until you get. I can see this being like a texture for like a sci-fi film, or like a texture for an alien sort of language, for example, or like a sci-fi settings where you need sort of popping textures like this. Maybe if I choose like a different font, how about this wingdings? You can never go wrong with wingdings. Oh my god, okay. Yeah, looking really nice. And you drag it up a little bit. Obviously there's like some artifacts over here that the displacement is not being able to get rid of. There's some imperfection that we're gonna have to live with, but you know, if you can do another choker on that, you can choke it even more. It's gonna get smoother, but we're gonna lose a lot of the details. That's where the displacement comes in to compensate for that. Back up the yeah, and that's one thing I did when I was playing around with text animation. The second thing that I did, which I'm gonna show you right now actually. So the second thing that I was experimenting with the text animation was, as you can see over here, is like a bunch of line textures using the same principle. They're popping in and popping out between another, and they're being offset by the values. Only this time they look like they're being stretched out, and that was done using the scale property of the text. So right now I'm just gonna type something out, maybe, oh, I'm still in wingdings. Hang on, sorry, I'm gonna change this back to something readable. I saw something like Nissan GTR. Right, this video is not sponsored by Nissan at all, although I wish it was, honestly. So what I did over here, do that again using character offset, and then we drag the effector range down, and smoothness, drag it down a little bit, and definitely randomize order. So now what we got is this bunch over here being offset in a randomized position. Okay, so here's a quick tip. If you ever run into this kind of problem using character offset, you know, when the characters that's being offsetted that has a different size compared to the old character, and the entire thing, it does not decide to adjust its tracking or kerning between itself. What we can do is go over here to character alignment, left or top. We're gonna change that to adjust kerning. Boom, and what it's gonna do is adjust the tracking between each character, or kerning between each character for us. so that it maintains the exact size every time it's being offset. And what we're gonna do is animate the offset. So the next thing I did to it was adding another animator. So make sure you don't get over here to put a new property into it, because it's gonna be affected in this animator. What you're gonna want to do is create a new text animator and head over here to tracking. And then when you animate that tracking property, what I did was having them animate from inwards to far outwards like this. So I'm also going to keyframe them over here. I'm going to spread them out like this. And as you remember from the example, it's also appearing sequentially and doesn't have the entire thing coming out like this in the beginning. So also that's gonna call for another text animator property, which is opacity. And from here, we're gonna drag the opacity down to 0, and we're gonna keyframe the endpoint. And over here, we're gonna zero out the endpoint. So basically, the animator is making the text, making each of the letters of the text at 0 opacity, and only when we close down the animation range does it return the opacity value of each of the letters back to 100. Okay, and what we're gonna want to do is randomize that order. Over here, we do the same thing again, randomize order, turning it on. And also the smooth, you don't want it to be too soft when it comes out, and the smoothness, we're going to drag it down to 17, maybe 13 for example. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I don't want these 3 to appear way before the other ones, so we're gonna randomize that. Here we go, random seed, randomize that appearance order. Right, so yeah, we got more bands coming out of those letters. Then the final touch to make them look like lines. See over here to scale, click over here to get rid of this constraint proportions. And then what I did is drag it up all the way up to maybe past 10,000. 20,000, 30, 51,000, until it looks like a straight line, you know, look like Adidas or something. Yeah, and then that's how we get this randomized line textures. The thing that happened to the other technique also applied to this technique as well, is that when you change the style or change the stylings or the look of the text, is gonna change the displacement as well. And that's how big the original text is. And some of the text has little details like this, which I think is you know, pretty interesting, and you can adjust it to hide it away or make them appear more. Yeah, that's pretty cool. We change something to our favorite font, which is Wingding, baby. See how that goes. I mean, we've expanded the pixels way too far now, so you know, whichever icon is gonna be in there, still gonna look like a stretch out pixels. Yeah. And also what I did in the example is I copied that many layers, and then I offset the settings a little bit, you know, just randomize all of the displacement, making sure you can be moving at certain speed from each other, or vary their order of appearance a little bit, you know, like that. And this one, I'm gonna head over here to change the filling of the text from the fill to a stroke. And then what we're gonna see here is actually the outline of the text instead of the text itself. So I'm gonna head over here to change it to red, for example, so that it's easier to see. So you know, if it's actually 100, and we're gonna see it's actually the outline of these icons. It's actually confusing. I'm gonna change it back to Helvetica. Boom. You see, it's gonna be the outlines of these words. You know, I drag it back up to 51,000. It's gonna be the outlines. And that's how we get more lines from the text. And I copied another one. This one I'm gonna make it green. And over here I applied a ball action effect to make them looks like dotted lines instead of a single line. Then I just see size and distances from the balls. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so I drag the space up and then drag the ball size down to make them look like dotted lines. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Hope you guys find this texture helpful in some capacity. I think it's pretty good if if you're running out of texture, you want to create something from scratch. So I think it can be a good alternative from the usual fractal noise, for example. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Catch you next time. Bye.